Hey guys, what is going on? RedMaster here, and welcome back to another episode of Cards and Castles. Where today, not really long removed from the November 2018 balance patch, we actually got a new set of balance changes just today. I think a few hours ago, actually. When I'm recording this, they went live, I believe. I don't. I mean, they went out a few hours ago, but I'm not really sure about the exact time. Regardless, a lot of big things happening in this change, which, from hearing from some people, some are conflicted on it, some are excited, some are a little frustrated. So we're going to be breaking down some of the major aspects of this change, at least in my opinion. And unlike the last balance change, there are actually some other things being addressed in this patch, not necessarily related to cards, but, which will be our first topic, things in the economy and general gameplay, which should also be interesting and, should be exciting at least for the most part. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it and talk about our first change for the December 2018 balance patch. So first, we're going to be starting off with some of the economy changes, and I feel like these are definitely a big positive change for the game. So we're starting off with the downside here, the one negative. The free pack has now been reduced to only having one card, which is, I guess, understandable considering what the next change is. I did like getting two cards from a free pack, kind of seemed worth it. Helped build up the common collection for newer players, and it's going to be tougher to do that now. However, the following change, quests now give a significant amount of silver as a primary reward, which you can see here as displayed. Quest packs are still given as secondary rewards, but are of course nerfed as a result. So for those of you who have been stocking up on quest packs, I believe opening those now, you're going to have a little less fortune than you would have a few hours ago, which is, it's tough if you don't have a full collection already, but I believe the silver change makes up for that greatly. Previously, silver was the only way you can buy things from the shop, and the only way we could get silver was from quest rewards or buying them directly off the, whatever platform you use, whether it be Steam, iOS, or Android. So with this change being implemented, it definitely opens up a lot, or at least with this change, you can see on the screen now 30 silver for two of my quests here. That's 60 silver a day, and with the prices in the shop being unchanged, of course, the packs still being 100 each. I think this is a great way for players to, continue to play quests, to be incentivized to play quests, because you can always just hoard up silver for, other, like new releases when event cards come out, things like that. So it's definitely a great change to see, and if you're a newer player, this helps you it gets you to purchase more packs quicker, thereby filling up your collection quicker and getting you into the competitive scene a little faster than the previous system. So I think the silver change definitely makes up for the what's it called? The free packs. That's what I think, or at least what they're now called as free cards. So I definitely think the economy change is a great improvement to the game. It kind of helps things progress a little more easier now, and it gives older players a reason to continue, like I said, to hoard up that silver if you guys want to, sit on for any future event cards or expansions, whatever that may be. But as a final note too, in the economy changes, the Enchanting Grove packs have now been refitted to just Enchanted packs, which contain, I believe, the latest cards from, any of the previous sets. I believe the term, or at least how they put it in the patch notes, was the latest 50 cards. So you can see things like the Parrot Rush in here. You can see the new card, which there is a new card. We will be talking about that in a different video. I'm going to kind of keep this to patch related things. The new card will come, like I said, tomorrow. But you can see definitely things like, from the Enchanted Grove in here, Call of the Grave, even a little dwarves and dinosaurs sprinkled in here as well, seeing as how it had the room. So overall, definitely a great little addition there to the pack. If you guys are looking for some of the newer things, don't want to go through the regular card packs, this is a great way to kind of get what you're looking for, or at least separate, what you're looking for, the old from the new. So overall, the economy changes are a great improvement. And coming off the economy changes, I feel like I'm going to actually go right into or at least some certain card changes, at least for today. Personally, I feel like the gameplay changes that were discussed aren't really worth for me to talk about in length for a video. They're really somewhat simple. They're not still, they're not groundbreaking. I mean, if you can go ahead and read them if you want. Of course, the linked Reddit post to all these patch changes will, as always, be in the description below. So if you guys want to read up on that, you can certainly do so. It's only 2 game mechanics that were even changed. One of them actually getting a hefty explanation as to why. So again, you can feel free to read that for yourself. But anyway, going right into the cards, I believe the first card I want to talk about is the Arctic Explorer. Probably the biggest notable rework, at least from this patch, in a positive way. Before I get ahead of myself there, because there are some other things to talk about. But anyway, we're going to start it off positively with the Arctic Explorer. He is now a 2/4 combo, draws a card when a target is frozen. For those of you who actually watched my draft video last night, this is actually the reason why the Arctic Explorer did not kill that suit of armor. I didn't notice it at first, but the more I kind of looked at it, and of course some people actually pointed out, and even confirmed with me privately that the Arctic Explorer was actually drawing me a card. Yeah, I kind of from there put the pieces together, and Arctic Explorer's ability was actually live before the patch went out. So, little subtle note there. But anyway, the combo, or at least a new combo for Arctic Explorer, I believe, is a very interesting change for it. It gives freeze as the ability as an archetype, really, or at least an archetypal deck to draw. Arctic Explorer kind of creates like a new draw engine for freeze decks, which I find quite interesting. I mean, freeze decks have always been, decks that I don't really think are super competitive, super viable. That might change, of course, with this upcoming patch. People are experimenting with freeze as probably like the #1 go-to, just because of how much stuff was changed for them, and in a positive way, I might add. So you could be seeing a lot of Arctic Explorer in the coming days. It's a great draw engine for freeze decks. I think the point is not really whether or not the Arctic Explorer can kill. I believe, though, that's probably going to be the point. You want him to kill. The fact that he could just constantly draw, as long as the target's frozen, is a great benefit for him. So, again, giving the freeze decks the power to just draw is incredible. But on the topic of freeze, there is a bit more to cover. Obviously, there were a few more notable changes in the freeze archetype that I want to point out to you guys. That primarily being the Ice Weaving and Cloak of Ice changes. Ice Weaving, just really a price reduction there, which I find useful, especially for when you have a draw engine that relies on it. So that's a pretty interesting 4G combo draw, but it is a hefty investment for said draw. So interesting, to see Ice Weaving go to 1 gold as sort of that. Just I don't really know. It kind of is a combo spell with Arctic Explorer, but in all, it's just kind of like, oh, it's a 1 gold now, so it's very cheap to play. So might want to consider it if you are running freeze-based decks, because I think that's going to come in handy. The other one is, though, Freeze Aura. The Cloak of Ice has been refitted to contain this Freeze Aura now, which is interesting because it goes off every turn, unlike, I believe, Inferno. So you're really keeping units frozen in a place with Cloak of Ice. I'm testing this out. I've personally thought that it was a bit overpowered a little bit, just a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to be groundbreaking, but personally, when you have a unit equipped with this and keep it in one position, you essentially just, and if it's near an enemy unit, you can keep that unit frozen. As long as that unit doesn't really die to burn, that unit, is going to be protected because your opponent can't really hit it, especially if maybe you have him surrounded on all 3 sides. Now, obviously, you're going to want to move units eventually, so you might not keep things frozen, but the ability to kind of just hold your opponent in place for an extended period of time is something that I feel like Cloak of Ice is not only capable of, but what it might bring to the table going forward in this patch. So I'm a bit nervous to see how Cloak of Ice kind of handles itself, if people are going to be running this. At least I feel like maybe at least 2 of in Frost decks. I don't really think 3 is necessary, because you might be holding 1 stuck in your hand most of the time, and that's not really a good thing. So I don't know. I'm just kind of nervous personally to see how Cloak of Ice handles it, but it was a good change to get it out of what it previously was, which was just kind of playing it and then freeze everything that's just around it. But that's it kind of did the same thing, but now it's a Frost Aura, so you're keeping things frozen if you maybe keep a unit in place. So definitely interesting to kind of look into for the future. Alright, so moving on, the next card I want to talk about is the Deflecting Shield. Now, I personally thought I would never kind of cover a Deflecting Shield review here in a patch review, but I think with the change that Deflecting Shield has gotten, I personally feel like it should be brought some attention to. Probably one of the lower changes, or at least lower on the radar, that I think some people are just kind of going to pass over and be like, okay, it's refitted to a trap, cool, cool. Giving trap decks a bit more tools since Dojo was heavily nerfed. But personally, I think Deflecting Shield now has become a bit more of a scarier trap. Personally, maybe nearly on the likes of Aiajitsu and Secret Dragon. That being because you are gaining 5 health out of this trap. Think about it, 5 health. That's an insane amount of health. And paired with things that already have beefy stats, like maybe an Awakened Golem, Ancient Arbor, or even like a lower guy on the list, Grudge Bear and Living Vines, now with their small reworks. Deflecting can be a very, very scary card. I'm personally looking forward to actually using one or two of these in my next builds, hopefully. But to see a card just give that much health, and consider how much we dislike Aiajitsu for doing a +4 attack. Think about like +5 health. Like, sure, you might be able to remove the unit regardless if it's like a smaller or weaker unit, but if you just play the trap on, or at least you play this trap on the golem per se. You've just given the golem an extra 5 health, putting it, if it's awakened, mind you, at a 413. So, or no, yeah, 413, 8+5. So it's crazy to think about. Absolutely insane. I'm looking for, like I said, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, this doesn't really resurface any kind of trap decks. You might see this in one or two Crusader builds. Definitely at a 2 of. I wouldn't recommend putting it at 3 in any sort of deck, because at that point it's going to be a bit clunky to use. But if you want to throw in 2, kind of just see how the health gain works, I definitely recommend it. And I think this is definitely going to be one of the under the radar changes that people are going to look over. But definitely keep an eye out for it. Definitely has some good potential there. Alright, so the last of the buffs that I want to talk about, at least for this review, in my opinion, is going to be the Dark Bender. Now, the Dark Bender did get an interesting change. It now actually has the same stats as the former Troll Gunner, 4 or 5, and now it costs 1 less. Of course, it is in the Warlock, so it's not going to be as prevalent per se, seeing as how pirates were kind of just run everywhere. But I think it's interesting to take note of the Dark Bender change. Definitely something to watch out for. Being 4 gold cheaper than the Troll Gunner, even though it doesn't really provide any extra abilities, the fact that it has the same stat line is pretty scary to think about, especially, again, for that 1 gold cheaper. You might see it a bit more, especially in Warlock decks, considering some of the changes that actually happen in the 4 gold slot, referring to card we'll talk about in a little bit. So he has the potential to kind of be showing up, at least in Warlock decks. So I would say keep an eye out for him. He is a bit difficult to deal with, of course, due to the fact that Troll Gunner's stat line previously was annoying to deal with. So you'll probably see Troll Gunner, kind of still exist in the form of Dark Bender, at least for this patch. So not going to touch upon too heavily, though, with this change, given that it kind of is no surprise on how to deal with it and how powerful this is, thanks to what we've learned about previously with the Troll Gunner. So I'm not going to stick too much on him, because we do actually have some things to get into, and unfortunately, it's time for the nerfs. Time to review some of these big nerfs. And what better place to start than the former Troll Gunner, or the aforementioned Troll Gunner, I should say. That probably is how I use English, right? Right. Okay, so the Troll Gunner didn't change in gold cost, but you can see he also got a buff to his stat line, now a 6/5. However, you can see that he now possesses Upkeep 3 rather than Treasure 1. I think this is an interesting turnaround for the Troll Gunner, now going from probably in every pirate deck to probably in a very few to none. Obviously, the Troll Gunner stat lines are great for a range unit, 6/5, definitely some beef to it and some power behind the punch. But the Upkeep 3 is definitely going to be devastating, especially when you don't have any treasure that's coming in with the Troll Gunner. You could have Merchant Estates to balance us out, but still, you would need all 3 of them just to handle the upkeep that Troll Gunner is giving out. And Pirates, there are definitely ways to kind of work around the upkeep, with like the new card that's out there. Like I said, Merchant's Estate, things like Dragon's Horde. But I think Troll Gunner having that upkeep 3 and you not having that guaranteed treasure every turn, because, things aren't guaranteed in this game, I would say that's definitely something to look out for. You'll see a lot less of Troll Gunner and like probably more of Dark Bender in Troll Gunner's place, at least in the Warlock side of things. Pirates, you'll probably have. I don't even know what Troll Gunner might get subbed out for. Maybe Sniper. Sniper is being cheap. Yeah, he is cheaper, I believe, and has more attack power, a little less health, but still something to consider. Troll Gunner no longer the top dog of the pirate faction, I believe. I don't know if it ever really was, but I know he would be in nearly every deck. So I would say with this kind of just ends Troll Gunner Saga for now. Definitely well-deserved nerf being in every pirate deck, but the upkeep 3, I agree, is definitely a bit rough. But overall, I think Troll Gunner, where he stands right now, he'll definitely lay low for a bit. I don't really see him emerging in any sort of way. It's rough to see this Troll Gunner get nerfed, but, not as compared to some of the other nerfs that are on this list. Sticking with the theme of pirates, we'll actually move on to Dwarven Scope now, which received an interesting nerf. Now a 4 gold, same effect, didn't really change the effect, but at an increase in gold, and this is certainly interesting. Dwarven Scope has been sort of an issue for a while now to some players, and I could see why. Giving the range at a cheap cost and being able to do a lot more in that turn is definitely something that player didn't really like to see, especially when you can just throw a Dwarven Scope on an already ranged unit, give him even more range, and just the things would go on from there. Players were expecting to have that health buff removed from the scope, but actually ended up getting a price increase. I think this definitely does do something to Dwarven Scope, though. I don't think it mitigates it from all pirate decks, but personally, I would run Scope now at a at a 2 copy, not really 3, because it is quite the investment to play the Scope, and let alone you don't want to be caught with it dead drawing the Dwarven Scope now, especially for what it costs. It does slightly limit some things that it can be placed on. Well, I guess not. That's not really fault. In the same turn, I should say. It definitely limits the same turn play abilities. Like the 9 gold Minotaur Scope combination. Things like that. And same with Phantom Strike, actually. I'm not going to pull... Actually, I'll pull up Phantom Strike just to kind of show you guys. Both of these actually received a 1 cost increase, I believe. Yeah, Phantom Strike now 2 gold. So, range being... Or at least added range getting valued a little higher now, which is nice to see. Definitely harder to use these cards, I would say. Or at least justifying them in the 3 gold range. I would say for sure Dwarven Scope I would still run 2 in most of my decks, but putting it at 3 is, like I said, harder to justify now, so it's something to consider. I don't really think Dwarven Scope will die down in popularity because of this. You'll still see a lot of the Dwarven Scope, but interesting to see that he's not being ignored, at least for this patch. He was addressed. We'll see if he gets addressed any further in the future, but an interesting change to say, nonetheless. Next up, the Hassan City Guards. So we actually have some notes regarding the guards, or at least for the next 2 cards, one of them being the guards, and the next one we'll talk about in a moment. But in regards to the developer notes, we have the following. City Guards are the most overused card in the game due to their ability to put out excess damage for their tier. This stat swap should give them more focus on the 2 bodies and potential combos arising from that, and open deck builds to more options for this gold tier. So, essentially what that means is the Hassan City Guards were everywhere. And pretty much wherever you were, you could agree, you would always see Hassan City Guards. For the past, several hidden combo videos, that's kind of proof of that. I would have, 3 copies of Hassan City Guard every deck. So, definitely tells you how oversaturated this card was. In regards to the fix, I think it was definitely an interesting stat, to take the stat swap approach. Kind of like he said in there, putting them focus on, if you want to use the guards, you're using them for the bodies rather than the stat line, which some decks still might use. Decks like Reanimate and, Reanimate I would say didn't use these guys. If you have a Last Will deck, potentially, because of the Grotesque offering, you can get rid of one of these bodies for the draw, because you are going to be running Grotesque in there, I imagine. So, decks like that, they can still utilize the guards well with the 2-body, focus. But definitely, it does open up more in the 2 gold area for a lot of decks. You might see probably more questing knights, more dwarven miners because of this. I would say that's going to be the one most people go to, I believe. Or you might see something else. They might opt to put the Sun City Guards toward the later end of the game. We'll have to see how deck building resolves around the new change, but I would say this is definitely going to be a heavy impact for nearly every deck out there. I mean, if you aren't running Hassan City Guards already, then props to you. Your deck wasn't really affected, but for those of you who were, which is a vast majority, I imagine, we're definitely going to have to consider something else for the 2 gold slot. But it should be interesting to see the diversity arise nonetheless. All right, and the final card we'll be talking about is Flux. So, another dev note regarding Flux: this card is a massively overused legendary and makes the game meta appear more stale than it is actually, That's, I think, a typo on his part. Regardless, we feel that a strong nerf okay, hold on. We feel that a strong nerf that will remove its inclusion in most competitive decks is appropriate. Okay. Little confused there on the grammar, but we are good. So essentially, the Flux was super abundant, nearly as abundant personally as the Hassan City Guards. Now the reason because of this, if you guys are part of the Discord, you'll know that the Crashlands code kind of still worked, regardless if you had Crashlands or not. If you were on the Steam build and typed in Crashlands into your codes, you would receive 3 copies of Flux. And people would just run abundant with Flux. They were nearly as abundant as the Hassan City Guard, which is interesting considering that it is a legendary. So I think the exploit of the code definitely led to this card's hard nerf. Interesting how he kind of states in here that he wants it to kind of remove it from the rank for a little while. He doesn't, people were kind of discussing, why didn't you put this at 3 gold? Why didn't you kind of give it the 2-3 stat line? It's because it kind of just, it's stated right there. He wants to remove it entirely, in a sense. I mean, I don't really blame him. The card was, again, nearly as abundant as Sun City Guard, and for a legendary, that's kind of just a little shocking. So I understand the desire to kind of just hard nerf it, put it in the ground for a little bit, and then kind of let other things flourish. And I think that's what's gonna end up happening here. We already see a bunch of interesting 4 gold substitutes for Flux, things like Barbarian that kind of already exists. But now new cards emerging like Dancing Swords and Sniper. I think those 2 are going to be the most optimal choices for people to kind of start throwing into their decks. So we'll see how that kind of plays out over the next few weeks. Definitely interesting to see Flux take this hard of a hit, though, for sure. I do think, personally, it's slightly deserved due to the exploitation of the code, like I said previously. So it deserves to kind of just lay low for a little bit, and I think this change is definitely going to be the one to do it. But yeah, I think overall, the last, I think, 3, 4 nerfs you kind of went over here were definitely impactful to the meta for sure. All of them had a decent role, so to see them nerf this heavily kind of illustrates that that Vaunt wants a shake up, at least in the top tier, or at least the ranked play overall. So it's kind of interesting to see how he handled that with these sets of changes. Alright folks, with that being said, that's going to do it for this patch review for December 2018. So if you guys did enjoy, be sure to give this video a like, share it, and comment down below your thoughts on the December 2018 patch. Do you like it? Do you not? Do you think there's something I missed? Be sure to leave that all in the comment section below. Or, like I said, or no, I didn't say this before, but if you guys do want my further insights on cards I didn't mention, again, be sure to leave that in the comments section below. I'll be sure to answer that if I can. And while you're down there, if you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that subscribe button to show you support the channel. Help us grow by clicking that subscribe button at no additional cost to you. And full Reddit link, as always, will be in the description below if you guys want to read these patch notes as well. Because, again, there's a lot of things I did not mention. And in regards to the new card, I know there is a new card in the game that was brought into this patch. You guys have might already seen it, but I will be covering that tomorrow. I just felt it would be more appropriate to kind of leave the patch stuff for its own video, and then the new card a little later on. So plus give me time to actually make something in terms of further analyzing the new card, seeing how other people feel about it and whatnot. 'Cause I think right now people are more focused on the patch than the new card, but we'll get to that tomorrow. So with that being said, guys, that's all from me for now. So until next time, stay gaming.